The Medicaid clerk's face went white. "Mr. Miller," she whispered, "according to this, you died in 1990. I almost laughed. "My name is Ethan James Miller. I was 32 years old, sitting in a cramped government office, with my last $52 folded in my wallet, my calloused hands clutching expired insurance papers. I'd been laid off from the lumber mill 6 weeks earlier. A forklift accident had wrecked my shoulder, the bills had eaten through my savings, and for the first time in my adult life, I was swallowing my pride to ask for help. "That's impossible," I said. "I've used this social security number since I got my first job at 18. The clerk, Linda Ramirez, typed something else. Her confusion turned into something that looked like fear. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers, and I felt, for just a moment, the ghost of the man who'd taught me what it meant to not belong. Gary Dawson had married my mother, Carol, when I was 8. 2 years after my father, Richard Miller, died in a trucking accident. Gary never hit me. He never starved me. He just made sure I understood, every single day, that I was baggage that came with the deal. His real daughter, Emily, got dance lessons and birthday parties. I got hand-me-downs and silence at the dinner table. Money doesn't grow on trees, he'd say. Got to prioritize family. The message was clear enough. I wasn't family. The day I turned 18, my bags were already packed by the front door. "You're a man now," Gary announced from his recliner, not bothering to stand. "Not my responsibility. Never really were, if we're being honest." My mother stood in the kitchen doorway twisting a dish towel, unable to meet my eyes. She never said a word. Only Emily, 12 years old, ran outside crying. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. This isn't right. For 15 years I built a life out of pure stubbornness. Construction sites, warehouses, finally the lumber mill. I never asked anyone for anything again. I told myself I didn't need Gary's approval, or my mother's love. I had my pride and my paycheck, and that was enough, until the mill closed. Until the medical bills, until I found myself in this office, and a clerk was looking at me like I was a crime scene. "Sir," Linda said carefully, "I need you to remain seated. My supervisor is coming." "What is going on?" My voice rose enough that people in the waiting room turned to stare. A security guard near the exit shifted his weight, hand drifting toward his radio. "The social security number you've been using was flagged by Interpol in the 90s, Linda said. "It belongs to a child reported deceased in a trucking accident, along with his father." The fluorescent lights seemed to burn brighter. "My father died in a trucking accident," I said, the words coming out mechanical. 1997. I was 6. I remember the funeral. "The child who died," she said softly, "was 3, in 1990. A tall man in a navy suit appeared at her desk. Marcus Cole, a supervisor who'd clearly seen every kind of bureaucratic disaster this office could produce. He looked at the screen, then at my face, and his professional composure cracked. In that crack, I saw something worse than anything Gary had ever shown me: recognition. "Dear God," he whispered. Then, louder, to Linda, "Lock down his file immediately. Don't call anyone else. I need to make a very specific phone call first." He turned back to me. "Mr. Miller, or whoever you really are, you need to prepare yourself. Everything you think you know about your life is about to change." I sat there with my $52 and my shaking hands, and understood that being thrown out at 18 for not being Gary's blood was nothing compared to what was coming, the discovery that I might not be anyone's blood at all. Cole pulled up a chair across from me. "Tell me your earliest memory," he said. "Not what you were told, what you actually remember." I closed my eyes. A yellow kitchen, sunflowers on the wallpaper, my mother singing while she cooked. But when I tried to hold on to the details, they slipped like water. "We moved around a lot after my father died," I said. "My mother said we couldn't afford to stay anywhere." "You said your father died when you were 6, Cole said quietly. "Why would you have been moving before that?" The inconsistency hit me like cold water. I had no answer. "Mr. Miller," Cole said, "the patterns in your memory, the gaps, the fact that you've been living under a dead child's identity, they all point to one possibility. You may have been abducted as a young child and raised under a false name." "That's insane," I said automatically. But even as the words left my mouth, pieces were already clicking into place. Gary's instant, permanent hostility. My mother's inability to look at me when my father came up. The complete absence of any photograph of me before the age of 7. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "Stay where you are. Your real mother has been looking for you for 32 years. Agent Dana Blake, FBI Missing Children Division." The room spun. Cole was already on his own phone, speaking low and fast. I stood up on unsteady legs. "I haven't done anything wrong," I said. "If using this number is some kind of crime, I had no idea." "Nobody's accusing you of anything," Cole said. "We just need to understand what's happening." 2 hours later, I sat across from Agent Dana Blake in a federal building conference room that smelled like old coffee and carpet cleaner. She laid photographs across the table like she was dealing cards. "Your name is Noah Wade Hayes," she said, sliding over a photo of a young couple holding a baby. The woman's green eyes, my exact shade, down to the fleck of gold in the left one, stared back at me. "Born March 15th, 1991, in Tulsa. You were 6 months old when you were taken." "September 1991, she went on, pulling out a decades-old police report. "Your mother, Laura Hayes, was loading groceries in a parking lot. A woman approached asking for directions. While Laura was distracted, someone else lifted you out of the cart. 30 seconds, start to finish. The security footage was garbage, but we know now that woman was Carol Porter." "Carol," I repeated. "My mother." Carol's real son, the real Ethan James Miller, died with his father in a trucking accident. But it wasn't 1997. It was March 1990, and the child wasn't 6. He was 3. She let that sit. Carol likely told you the story so many times your mind built false memories around it to match. It happens more than people think in cases like this. Children accept what they're told and construct an identity out of it. She swiped to another photo. A woman in her late 50s, eyes red from decades of crying, but bright with something that looked, impossibly, like hope. "Laura Hayes, your mother. She never stopped looking. She runs a center for missing children now. They've found over 200 kids in 30 years. Your father, Stephen, retired early to help her run it. You have a younger brother, Aaron, born 3 years after you disappeared. He's 30 now. Contractor, out of Broken Arrow." Then she told me about Gary. "He's been cooperating fully. When you were 17, Carol got drunk one night and told him everything. That you weren't really Ethan, that she'd taken you after her son died because she couldn't stand the emptiness. Gary was going to report her immediately. She begged him to wait until you turned 18 so your whole life wouldn't collapse while you were still a minor. He agreed, on the condition you leave the house and never come back. So instead of telling me the truth," I said, "he just threw me away." "In his own twisted way," Blake said. "He thought he was protecting you. He believed making you leave was better than you finding out your entire life was a lie while you were still a kid under his roof. That's why he always said I wasn't his blood. He knew I wasn't anyone's blood. At least not who I thought." "You're wrong," Blake said. "You're someone's blood. You're Laura and Stephen Hayes' blood. They've been bleeding for 32 years, waiting for this exact moment." She stood and walked to the door. "Are you ready?" I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. The door opened, and time stopped. Laura Hayes stood frozen in the doorway, smaller than I'd pictured. One hand pressed over her mouth, tears already falling. Behind her, Stephen Hayes gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing holding him up. "My boy," Laura whispered. "My baby boy." She crossed the room slowly, like I might vanish if she moved too fast, and touched my face with trembling fingers. "You have your grandfather's chin," she said, laughing through tears. "I always wondered if you'd grow up to look like him." "I don't remember you," I said, hating how it sounded but needing to say it. "I'm sorry. I don't remember any of this." "You were 6 months old," Laura said, her hand still on my cheek. "We never expected you to remember. We just wanted you to come home." Then she pulled me into her arms, and something in me that had been frozen since I was 18 years old, since a duffel bag hit the porch and a screen door shut behind me, finally started to thaw. Stephen's arms came around both of us. In the doorway, a man who looked like a version of me from a different, kinder life watched with eyes that mirrored my own. My brother, my actual brother. "We have so much to tell you," Laura said against my shoulder. "So much time to make up for." "Welcome home, Noah. Welcome home." 3 months later, I stood in what had once been my nursery in Tulsa. Laura had kept it exactly as it was the day I disappeared. The crib, the teddy bear from my first Christmas, the alphabet border she'd painted herself while pregnant. Tiny clothes still hung in the closet, waiting 32 years for a baby who never came home. "I couldn't change it," she told me. "Stephen wanted to, after 10 years, but I knew you'd come back. A mother knows." The Hayes house was nothing like the one I'd grown up in. Photos covered every surface, including age progression images of what I might have looked like at 5, at 10, at 20. They'd celebrated my birthday every year with a cake and an empty chair. Aaron told me he used to talk to my photo like I could hear him, sharing secrets, promising to teach his missing brother to ride a bike someday. Carol was sentenced to 15 years for kidnapping. In her confession, she broke down completely, describing how losing her son had unraveled something in her, how she'd seen me alone in a cart for one unguarded second and made a choice that ruined every life it touched, including mine and hers. She'd used her dead son's identity for me, moved constantly in the early years to avoid being caught, and eventually believed her own story so completely that she nearly forgot it wasn't true. Gary got probation for concealing the crime once he learned it. Emily reached out after the news broke. "I always wondered why Dad hated you so much," she said over coffee. "Now I understand. He was scared, of the truth, of Mom going to prison, of losing everything. He took the coward's way out. We're building something like a relationship now, though it's complicated, knowing her mother stole me from mine." The Hayes family didn't just give me back a name. They gave me a purpose. I work at the family center now, using my own story to help other families still waiting. We found 15 missing children last year alone. Aaron and I work construction together. He owns the company and made me a partner on day one. 30 years is a long time to be an only child, he told me. "I've got a lot of brother stuff saved up." He wasn't kidding. Fishing trips, restoring an old truck with Stephen, Sunday dinners where nobody keeps score of whose blood is whose, because we all are. My grandmother, Margaret, the woman who spent 27 years believing she was my biological grandmother, drove straight to Tulsa the moment she heard the truth. "I don't care what the DNA says," she told the Hayeses. "I loved this boy for 27 years. That makes him mine, too." They welcomed her without a second thought. I have more grandmothers now than I know what to do with. The $52 I had in my wallet that day sits framed on my desk at the foundation. It's a reminder that rock bottom can be a launching pad instead of an ending. The settlement from the mill injury went straight into upgrading our investigative software and hiring a full-time researcher, because studying my own case file taught me something I'll never forget. The grocery store where I was taken had been investigated 3 separate times over the years. Each time, they were one interview away from finding Carol. One customer saw her and didn't think it mattered enough to mention. One security guard clocked the van and never wrote down the plate. One person, at any point, could have changed everything and didn't. So now, when I speak at foundation events, I tell people the same thing every time. If something feels wrong, say something. Trust the feeling in your gut. You might be the one person who brings someone home. I spent 32 years as Ethan James Miller, a ghost wearing the name of a boy who died before I ever learned to walk. I was thrown away at 18 by a man who told me I wasn't his blood, never knowing I was someone else's blood entirely. Someone who never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, never stopped loving a son she hadn't seen since he was 6 months old. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is just a door. That broken Social Security number didn't only expose my past. It handed me a future, a real family, a real purpose, a truth heavier and more real than any lie I'd lived 32 years believing. The boy who was told he was nobody's blood turned out to be somebody's everything. And that somebody had been waiting 32 years to say one word: welcome.